he lost 25 pounds and looks wonderful, and you can tell her how wonderful you feel. And we went to his endocrinologist, and he achieved a 5.5 A1C. I went plant-based mostly around 2011, and I tried to affect and change Jack's diet, but he, at the time, just didn't have any interest. He complained it was hard to digest vegetables and beans and yada, yada, yada. And all the while, as we've talked about, he was slowly gaining weight on the pump because of his aggressive overdrive on the bolusing. It was going up and down, and it just seemed to me it was impossible to lose weight. Like, how could I even help him lose weight? We had a couple medical crises in the family. Jack's sister, who's also a diabetic for 50 some odd years, had a triple bypass. And then Jack had an accident, and a very bad accident, breaking his arm, and then some cardio results that were just not good. Anyway, it was very bad. And so I said, hey, why don't we look at alternatives here? And then it just so happened that Forks Over Knives had a plant-based lecture that I asked him to sit in, and it was easier for him to listen to things from another person, not his wife. And then a week or two later, there was a mailing that Robbie was going to be doing a presentation. So we listened to that. Jack was intrigued, the fact that it was a diabetic talking to a diabetic. And so we signed up to speak to Robbie. And Jack liked Robbie, I guess. And then we said, let's do it right there on the spot. Let's just sign up for 12 weeks. And we started working with Linda. Because Jack has had diabetes, he's 76 years old, and he's had diabetes for 75 years. And we're married 42 years. We were both not your typical customer, I'd imagine. We came in highly educated, Jack about diabetes and me about nutrition. And we dove in. We just dove in right away. And I downloaded the menu plans. I was making 3 meals a day. And lo and behold, he found the food okay.
Believe it or not, it's edible.
It was edible. I kept looking for things I thought he would eat. And week by week, Linda was helping us refine our approach and realizing I needed to really understand carbohydrates and how much, and, honest, not just winging it, that I started to do the decision tree. Drove us crazy. That's when we started to really measure. And Jack continued to feel better. He started reaching days of 80, 90, 95, 100% in range, which just, made us all that. It was fun, to start gaming the system. And then lo and behold,
we should not leave out Cronometer.
The Cronometer.
Because we started that right about when we started mastering and working with Linda.
Yeah.
I mean, she led us into doing that. And so we used that
as a tool
quite vigorously for a month or two.
And then got even more serious when we started doing the decision tree. And I'm going to turn it over to Jack in just a second because he's actually the patient. The crescendo, the la-da moments are that he lost 25 pounds and looks wonderful, and you can tell her how wonderful you feel. And we went to his endocrinologist, and he achieved a 5.5 A1C. So take it over, Jack.
I feel more in control. I'm certainly not fully in control. Certain things have not changed from the decades where I got really quite good. It was flying by the seat of my pants, really, in terms of dosing insulin and eating appropriate foods.
Carb counting.
I never got into carb counting. And so Cronometer really was an essential tool for that in dosing for specific meals. And of course, that's where the mastering program comes in, because the meals are very specific and they're very measured. So that worked with the pump and the diet and the notations. I was able to incorporate some things that, yes, I knew about over past years, like taking a pre-meal bolus. Well, I knew that, but I very seldom used it. And so that became pretty much a regular. And there are certain things about the diet. I mean, the diet really was a combination of heart-healthy diet, which we started several months before the sequence that Diane described. Mm-hmm. My cardiologist had me totally off dairy and totally off meat. We are not totally off fish, so that's not cricket according to the mastering, but there's only so much, and I pretty much gave up salt, except, of course, for the great gobs of salt that the American food industry imposes on us. And
we don't eat much.
And we both looked into, and I looked in with new eyes into the whole business about ultra-processed foods. I had known for decades that, again, not to reveal my biases and opinions, but, I've been aware that the American food industry is essentially out to poison us all. Linda was quite adamant about leafy greens, and so when I first heard that and thought about it, I said, no way. And so now I really
He's a devotee.
I now have always at breakfast and almost always at dinner, I start out with a large bowl that I wilt, mainly spinach. But I mean, I'll take anything that's green and leafy. I'm not a great fan of kale, but hey, it's so it's worth a try.
Come on over, get off that fence. Certainly for older people, where they're getting slower and everything's slowing down, it's a really great tool for helping you to clean up your management of your diabetes, as you're also addressing things like blood pressure and cardio and
Yeah.
But I would think for a young person too, to just get control of it. Years ago, I'd read a quote, it's not my, through discipline there is freedom. And if this isn't a manifestation of that, where you really then become free of that up and down, up and down, up and down, that controls your day. You take back the ability to live in a more spontaneous way because you've got this discipline that once you get the hang of it, it works.